Hey guys, tonight we're casting off the moorings of the modern world and sailing back to the Golden Age of Piracy. But we're not here for the swashbuckling, the yo-ho-ho, or the parrots on the shoulder. Forget the dashing heroes of the silver screen. Tonight, we're taking a deep breath, or maybe you should hold it, and diving into the disgusting, stinking, and utterly unglamorous truth of what hygiene was really like aboard a pirate vessel. It's a world where the greatest treasure was gold, but a lemon, and the most terrifying monster was the kraken. But the festering infection in the guy's leg next to you, you might not survive the first week, let alone the first chapter. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It helps the channel find other curious minds like yours. And while you're at it, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The story begins with a choice. You're standing on a wharf in a place like Nassau or Port Royal, and the air is so thick with smells you can almost chew it. The cobblestones under your worn-out shoes are slick with a combination of fish guts, spilled rum, and things you'd rather not identify. This isn't a clean world to begin with. The 18th century has no concept of sanitation as we know it. The perfume of the rich is just a thin, floral veil over the stench of unwashed bodies, and for everyone else, there isn't even a veil. The reek of coal smoke, sewage, and livestock is the constant background music of life on land. A ship is waiting in the harbor. It's not a majestic galleon, not one of the pristine vessels of the Royal Navy with its gleaming brass and disciplined order. This one is scrappy. Its hull is dark and patched, stained with tar and sea salt. It looks less like a conquering vessel and more like a stubborn old sea creature that refuses to die. And yet, it represents a way out. On shore, your life is one of back-breaking labor for pennies, or perhaps you've just escaped indentured servitude, or maybe you fled the brutal discipline of a merchant vessel or unnaval ship, where the cat-o'-nine-tails is the primary to love motivation. Historians still debate the primary driver for piracy. Was it a revolutionary cry for freedom and democracy on the waves, or was it simply the most logical career move for desperate, skilled sailors with no other options for you? Standing here with an empty stomach and holes in your shoes, the academic debate is meaningless. All you know is that the life here is a dead end, and that ship, for all its grime, is promising something different. Eamon approaches you. He doesn't look like a captain from a storybook. His face is a roadmap of sun-baked wrinkles. One of his eyes has a milky film over it, and when he smiles, you see more gaps than teeth. The smell that rolls off him is a potent cocktail of stale sweat, cheap rum, and chewing tobacco. He makes you an offer. He doesn't promise a mountain of gold double ounce. The pitch is more practical. He talks about a share. One man, one vote, a cut of every prize, fair and square, as written down in the ship's articles. He speaks of freedom from the lash, of being your own master. He conveniently omits the finer details. He doesn't mention the taste of water that's been sitting in a cask for 6 weeks, teeming with green slime. He doesn't describe the hardtack biscuits, so full of weevils that old sailors joke it's better to eat them in the dark so you can't see what you're chewing. And he certainly doesn't mention the slow, agonizing decay of scurvy, the fevers that can sweep through a crew and kill a third of the men, or the fact that the ship's designated surgeon is usually the cook or the carpenter, whose primary medical tools are a bottle of rum and a saw. You look back at the grimy, oppressive town, then out to the ship bobbing on the waves. It's a choice between two kinds of filth, but one of them comes with the illusion of hope. You agree. You walk the unsteady gangplank, your hand gripping a rough rope for balance. The moment your foot touches the deck, the ship's true scent embraces you. It's an ancient, complex aroma that has soaked into the very soul of the wood. It's the sharp tang of hot tar used for waterproofing, the musty odor of damp timber that never truly dries, the sour smell of the bilge deep below, and the undeniable, overarching perfume of dozens of unwashed men. living in cramped quarters. This is your new home. Its scent will cling to you, seep into your clothes and your skin, and become the smell of your entire world. The adventure hasn't even begun, but the reality of it is already filling your lungs. You take another step, and your foot makes a soft, sticky sound. The deck beneath you isn't the clean, scrubbed wood of a respectable merchantman. It's coated in a fine layer of grime, and in the seams between the planks, hot tar has been poured to keep the water out. It's perpetually tacky under the sun, grabbing at the soles of your shoes. You instinctively wipe your hand on your trousers after touching a railing, and your palm comes away feeling greasy. Your eyes begin to take in the details of your new home. It's smaller than you thought, and infinitely more cluttered. Ropes of all thicknesses are coiled on deck or run in a complex web up to the masts and spars. Everything is functional, everything is within arm's reach. This is a workspace, brutal and deficient. There's no wasted space for comfort. The cannons, for instance, are not polished ornaments. They are squat, ugly lumps of iron, their carriages stained with powder and rust. A stray chicken pecks at something unit and fightable near the base of the mainmast. A reminder that you're not the only living creature on board. There's a debate among those who study this era. What kind of ship was the ideal pirate vessel? Some argue for the small, nimble sloop, fast enough to chase down merchants and escape naval patrols. Others point to captured frigates, slower, but more heavily armed, better for a direct fight. The truth, as you're now standing on it, is that a pirate ship was whatever the pirates could get their hands on. This one seems to be a former merchant brig, built for cargo, not for war. It feels heavy in the water, sturdy, but you can already sense it will be a sluggish dog in a chase. Its sides are scarred with old repairs, and you can see where previous cannon fire has been crudely patched over. A man with a braided beard and a face that looks like a worn leather pouch introduces himself as the quartermaster. On a navy or merchant ship, this man would be in charge of supplies. Here, his role is far more significant. He is the crew's voice, the keeper of the ship's articles, the one who ensures a fair division of plunder and rations. He represents the strange, fragile democracy that governs this floating world. He unrolls a piece of parchment, its edges curled from damp. This is the code you will live and die by. You can't read, but he points to the marks and symbols as he explains the rules. No fighting on board. No stealing from a crewmate. Every man has a vote in the affairs of the moment, and every man gets his share. A strange bit of trivia from this time is that many pirate articles included compensation clauses for injuries, a specific sum for losing a leg, an arm, or an eye in battle. It was a brutal form of insurance, a stark acknowledgement of the job's risks. He then gestures for you to follow him below. The transition is immediate and shocking. You step away from the open air and the wide sky and plunge into a cramped, dim world. The ladder is steep, the rungs slick. You have to duck your head to avoid cracking it on the massive, wooden beams that support the deck above. The first thing that hits you is the air. Up on deck, the stench was at least diluted by the sea breeze. Down here, it is concentrated, thick, and warm. It's the smell of too many men living too close together, of unwashed bodies and unwashed laundry, of stale food, bilge water, and the faint, unsettling odor of the rats that live in the darkness. The light from the open hatch vanishes behind you, and you are plunged into near total blackness. It's a profound, disorienting darkness that the eyes struggle to pierce. Gradually shapes begin to emerge from the gloom. You are on the gun deck, the same level as the cannons. But between the guns, this is also where the majority of the crew lies. There are no cabins, no private rooms. There is only the communal, suffocating space. You see dozens of hammocks hanging from the beams, wrapped and tied up for the day. Beneath them are sea chests, battered and personal, holding the few possessions a man might own. The ship itself seems to groan around you. It's not a silent place. The timbers creak and moan with every gentle rock of the waves, a constant, low complaint as if the wood itself is in pain. You hear the scuttling of unseen things in the shadows and the drip, Drip, drip of water seeping through the hull into the bilge far below. The quartermaster leads you to an empty space between two cannons, pointing to a vacant hook on a beam. "This is you," he grunts, before leaving you to absorb your new reality. This is it. Not a room, not even a corner. Just a 6-foot patch of suffocating air, sandwiched between a cannon and another man's hammock. This is your bed, your home, your entire private world. You stand there in the dark, listening to the ship breathe around you, the smell seeping into your very being. As darkness settles outside, the world below deck begins to change. The relative quiet of the afternoon gives way to the shuffling, grunting, and coughing of the returning crew. One by one, men descend the ladder, their silhouettes briefly blocking the faint light from the moon and stars above. They move with unpracticed ease in the gloom, their bodies accustomed to the cramped confines. For you, it's a terrifying maze of moving shadows. The space, which felt merely empty and large before, is now shrinking with every man who enters. This is when you meet your neighbors, not with a handshake or a formal introduction, but with a gradual, invasive awareness of their physical presence. The man whose hammock will hang to your right drops his sea chest with a heavy thud. He is a mountain of a man with a wild, tangled beard that seems to have captured remnants of his last few meals. He says nothing, just begins to unlace his boots, and the smell that rises from his feet is so sharp and sour it makes your eyes water. On your other side is a weary, nervous-looking man who is constantly scratching at his arms and neck, his fingernails making a dry, rasping sound against his skin. You watch them and the others as they prepare for sleep. It's a simple, crude ritual. Boots are kicked off, and perhaps a jacket is removed if it's a warm night. But that's it. No one washes, no one changes into sleeping clothes. The concept would be laughable. The clothes they wear are the clothes they work in, fight in, and sleep in, day after day, week after week. They are stiff with salt, sweat, and grime. You realize that your own clothes, which felt filthy when you came aboard, are practically pristine by comparison. You make a mental note that this will not last. Your main task is the hammock. It's a simple piece of heavy canvas, but getting into it is an art form you have yet to master. It swings mockingly as you try to position yourself. Your first attempt almost sends you sprawling onto the grimy deck. The weary man next to you lets out a short, dry cackle. It's not friendly, but it's not entirely malicious either. It's the sound of someone who has seen this 100 times. Finally, you manage to tumble into the canvas sling, and it cocoons you tightly. The feeling is strange. You are suspended in the air, rocking gently with the ship's slow, rhythmic roll. This was a key piece of naval technology, the hammock. Adopted from the native peoples of the Caribbean, it was a genius solution for sleeping on a moving ship, as it swung with the motion, preventing a sleeper from being tossed to the floor in rough seas. But the genius of its design does not account for the proximity of your fellow sleepers. The mountain of a man is now in his hammock, and his snores begin almost instantly. It's not a gentle sound, it's a deep, weak, rattling snore that seems to vibrate through the very air, punctuated by whistles and sudden, choked silences that make you wonder if HES just died. The weary man is a mutterer, whispering a constant stream of curses and laments into the darkness, and then there is the smell. With the crew settled, the air becomes a physical entity. It's a thick, human fog composed of dozens of individual stenches blended into one. There is the overpowering aroma of stale sweat, the foul odor of bad breath and rotting teeth, the sharp tang of urine from someone who couldn't be bothered to go up on deck, and the faint, sweetish smell of decay that hints at sickness. Historians and novelists often speak of the pirate brotherhood, a democratic fraternity of equals united against the tyranny of the world. And it's true that their social structure, with its articles and votes, was remarkably progressive for its time. But scholars still debate how deep this brotherhood truly went. Was it a bond forged in shared ideals, Or was it simply a practical alliance of desperate men who would stick together only as long as it was profitable and convenient as you lie there, suspended in a hammock just inches away from a snoring, stinking stranger? The romantic notion of brotherhood feels very far away. It feels more like a cage shared with animals. You close your eyes, trying to will yourself to sleep, but the sensory assault is relentless. You hear a man a few hammocks down begin to cough, a deep, hacking cough that sounds like HES trying to expel something from the bottom of his soul. Every creak of the ship's timbers sounds like a footstep in the dark. You feel a faint tickling on your neck and instinctively slap at it, wondering what kind of insect has just found you. This is the reality that lies beneath the adventure. There is no silence. There is no clean air. You are just one more breathing, sweating, stinking body packed into the belly of this wooden beast. You are never truly alone, yet you have never felt more isolated. The gentle rocking of the ship, which should be soothing, feels like the slow, indifferent breathing of a monster that has swallowed you whole. The first morning you wake up on the ship, you don't wake up so much as you surface. You drift up from a shallow, restless sleep, pulled out by the changing sounds and light. The deep, rumbling snores have mostly subsided, replaced by the shuffling uncoughing of a crew stirring to life. A pale, gray light filters down the hatchway, illuminating dust motes and tiny insects dancing in the air. Your first conscious thought is about the feeling of the hammock against your back. It's damp, not wet as if it had been soaked, but a profound, chilling clam mind's that seems to have seeped into the canvas from the humid air itself. You swing your legs out and your bare feet touch the deck. It's cool and slightly sticky. As you pull on the boots you kicked off last night, you feel the stiff, damp leather resist your foot. A deep-seated instinct, a memory from your life on land, makes you crave the feeling of clean water on your face, the simple luxury of rinsing the grime from your skin. You look around, wondering where a man might do such a thing. An older sailor, his face a eathery mask of wrinkles, sees the lost look in your eyes. HES sitting on his sea chest, methodically sharpening a knife. He doesn't look up, but says, "Don't even think about it." His voice is a gravelly rumble. Water's for drinking, not for preteens. And that is your first lesson in the ship's most rigid economy. Fresh water is life. It is a finite, precious resource that ticks away with every passing day at sea. It is guarded more jealously than gold, because gold cannot quench a thirst that will kill you. So you think, what about the ocean? There's an endless supply of that. You could trail a bucket over the side. You might even see some of the men do it, splashing their faces and chests with the cold seawater. But you quickly learn that this is a temporary and oft unfoolish solution. Washing your clothes in salt water is a terrible mistake, one you only make once. The salt doesn't rinse out. It crystallizes as the fabric dries, creating a coarse, abrasive material that rubs against your skin, chafing it raw. The salt-stiffened cloth never feels clean and, worse, it attracts moisture from the air, meaning your clothes are somehow perpetually, stubbornly damp. This is why no one washes their clothes. They are worn until they are so stiff with salt, tar, and filth that they can practically stand up on their own, and then they are either patched, repaired, or thrown overboard. You look down at your own shirt and trousers. They are already starting to lose their landsman-esque softness, acquiring a new, rough texture. You notice something else, a unique and practical solution to the problem of staying dry. One of the sailors is on deck, a bucket of black, bubbling tar simmering over a small brazier. He is methodically painting the thick, stinking liquid onto a pair of heavy canvas trousers. This is a niche piece of seafaring ingenuity you don't ever see on land. Tarred canvas becomes waterproof. It's stiff, it smells awful, and it's hot in the sun, but it keeps the sea spray and the rain from soaking through to the skin. It's a desperate, grimy kind of armor against the elements. You see men with tarred hats and jackets, their clothes blackened and shiny, more like a crustacean's shell than a textile. This gritty reality stands in stark contrast to the popular image of the pirate. You've heard stories, of course, of flamboyant captains like Calico Jack or Bartholomew Roberts, dressed in stolen silks and velvets. Historians still argue about this. Was the flamboyant pirate costume a real phenomenon, a deliberate act of class warfare where they wore the clothes of the rich to mock them, or is it a romantic exaggeration? And the reality was that most pirates, most of the time, wore the same practical, filthy slops as any other sailor looking around at the men on your ship, with their tar-stained trousers and sun-bleached shirts. The answer seems obvious. Perhaps a captain might keep a stolen fancy coat for a grand entrance into a port, but on the open sea, practicality and the filth that came with it was king. Any fine fabrics they plundered were far more valuable as cargo to be sold than as clothes to be worn and ruined in this environment. As the days turn into a week, you feel the filth becoming a part of you. Your skin develops a permanent greasy film. Your clothes, which you now sleep in every night, have molded to your body, caked with a mixture of sweat, salt, and food stains. The desire to be clean fades, replaced by a dull acceptance. You begin to understand that a small cut or a patch of chafed skin is not a minor annoyance here. In this world without cleanliness, where every surface is teeming with invisible life, any break in the skin is an open invitation to infection. The clothes you wear are not just uncomfortable, they are a constant, abrasive threat to your health. You stop scratching at the insect bites on your arms because you've seen what happens when you draw blood. You are learning the hard way that on a pirate ship, the single most important barrier between you and a slow, painful death is your own unbroken, unwashed skin. After a few days at sea, a new and unavoidable biological reality makes itself known. It's a need that on land is a private, simple affair, but here, surrounded by dozens of men and an endless expanse of water, it becomes a question of logistics and nerve. But where is it you look around the cluttered deck, but see no small outhouse, no private cabin, nothing that suggests a designated facility? The very idea seems absurd in this cramped, functional world. You ask one of the other sailors, a quiet man who is mending a sail with a palm and needle. He doesn't even look up from his work. He just jerks his thumb toward the very front of the ship, toward the pointy bit that juts out over the waves. The heads, he mutters, and returns to his stitching. Confused, you make your way forward, stepping over coils of rope and around the anchor windlass. You go past the foremast and out onto the bowsprit, the long, sturdy spar that extends from the ship's prow. And there you see it. It's not even a structure. It's just a set of carved wooden gratings, or sometimes just a simple plank with a hole in it, positioned on either side of the bowsprit, hanging directly over the open ocean. A name that would be adopted by navies worldwide is still used for a ship's toilet to this day. The design, you realize, is brutally practical. The bow of the ship is what cuts through the waves, sending spray flying. This area is constantly being washed by the sea. The ocean itself is the flushing mechanism. It's a self-cleaning toilet, in theory. The reality, as you are about to discover, is far less elegant. To get there, you have to climb out over the water, clinging to a network of ropes. The ship is constantly moving, rising and falling with the swell of the sea. It's a precarious perch. You sit down, your back to the deck facing the vast, empty horizon, and you are completely, utterly exposed. Anyone on the fordeck can see you. There is no door, no screen, no privacy whatsoever. It is the most vulnerable position imaginable. Then there is the wind. The wind is a critical and mischievous variable in this equation. A misjudgment of its direction can have immediate and deeply unpleasant consequences, sending everything back onto the side of the hull or worse, onto you. You learn very quickly to check the telltales on the rigging before you even think of settling in. A cold splash of seawater from a passing wave is another constant threat, startling and chilling. This is a strange bit of maritime lore That is absolutely true. Countless sailors were lost, not in battle or storms, but by being knocked from the heads by an unexpected wave while they were at their most helpless. As you cling there, you can't help but think about the social dynamic of it all. What does this total lack of privacy do to a man? What does it do to a group of men? Historians can reconstruct the physical layout of a ship from plans and archaeological finds, but they can only speculate on the psychological impact of a life with no personal space. Did this shared, humbling experience forge a strange kind of bond, stripping away all pretense and reducing everyone to the same basic animal level, or was it just another daily degradation in a life full of them? Another reminder that you were not a person but a component, a piece of the ship's machinery. There is no written record of pirates discussing their feelings on the matter. The grimy details of daily life were too mundane to be recorded in an era where survival was the only thing worth writing about. You finish your business, your knuckles white from gripping the ropes. You pull yourself back onto the relative safety of the deck, feeling a profound sense of relief, but the experience lingers. It's a powerful symbol of your new life. You have been stripped of comfort, of cleanliness, and now of the most basic human dignity. There are no secrets here. Every aspect of your existence, from sleeping to eating to this most private act, is on public display. You are part of a pack is on public display, and the rules of the civilized world, the simple dignities you took for granted on land, have been washed away, carried off on the same wind you now know to be so treacherous. The ship no longer feels just like a dirty vessel, it feels like a living organism that has completely absorbed you, leaving no part of you untouched by its crude, relentless reality. You've started to acclimate to the lack of privacy and the constant, underlying stench. Your mind, in a remarkable act of self-preservation, has begun to filter them out, downgrading them from a constant assault to a mere background hum. But there is one sensation that you cannot ignore, one that seems to bypass the brain and settle deep within your bones, the eternal, inescapable dampness. It's not like being caught in the rain. It's a more profound and insidious state of being. The air itself feels heavy, saturated with moisture you can't see but can feel on your skin and in your lungs. When you lean against the inner wall of the hull, the wood doesn't feel solid and dry, it feels cool and slick, as if it's gently weeping. You left a spare shirt folded in your sea chest, and when you take it out, it feels cold and heavy, clinging to itself. A faint, musty smell of mildew rises from it, the scent of slow decay. This oppressive humidity comes from two sources, from without and from within. From without, there is the sea itself. Salty spray from the waves constantly mists the deck, finding its way down the hatches. Rain squalls can appear with little warning, drenching everything in minutes, but the more relentless source of damp is the ship itself. A wooden vessel is not a seamless, waterproof bathtub. It is an object under immense, constant stress, made of thousands of individual pieces of wood. The seams between the planks are packed with okama, tarred rope fiber, and sealed, but the ocean is patient. It always finds a way in. Water perpetually seeps through the hull, drop by painful drop, collecting in the very bottom of the ship. This lowest point is called the bilge. The bilge is the ship's nightmare basement. It's a dark, inaccessible space where all the water that leaks into the vessel gathers into a foul, stagnant lake. But it's not just seawater down there. The bilge is the repository for everything that drips, spills, or is thrown into the guts of the ship. It's a putrid soup of leaked rum from the cargo hold, vomit from seasick sailors, discarded food scraps, bilge rat droppings, and anything else too unpleasant to keep on the decks. The smell that wafts up from the bilge is legendary, a gag-inducing concentrate of all the foulness on the ship. And so twice a day, every day, comes the call you learn to dread: man the pumps. This is not a choice. The ship's survival depends on it. You and a team of other men take your places at the cumbersome, wooden pump handles. It is grueling, mind-numbing labor. You push and pull, your muscles screaming, your breath coming in ragged gasps. For what feels like an eternity, the only result is a horrible sucking, gurgling sound from below. Then it begins. Stinking stream of blackish gray water vomits out of the spout and across the deck, flowing out through the scuppers. The stench is overwhelming, and you try to breathe through your mouth, which is a mistake. You can taste it. This constant dampness is more than just a discomfort, it is a direct threat to your health. Your skin is never truly dry. It becomes soft and pale, prone to rashes and fungal infections that sailors called crotch rot and other, more colorful names. The endless friction of your damp, salt-stiffened clothes rubs your skin raw, especially in the places where you move, like your armpits and inner thighs. A simple patch of chafed skin, which on land would heal in a day, here becomes a red, angry wound that weeps and refuses to close. You learn to watch these small injuries with a constant, low-level paranoia. There is a great deal of academic disagreement about what truly motivated the infamous pirate lifestyle. Was it a desire for wealth, a political rebellion, a rejection of society? But as you stand there, soaked in sweat and stinking bilge water, your skin itching, feeling a chill that has nothing to do with the temperature, you begin to form your own theory. You hear stories of pirates finally making it to shore after months at sea, of how they would spend their plundered gold in a mad frenzy of drink and debauchery. Perhaps it wasn't just a celebration of riches. Perhaps it was a desperate, frantic attempt to escape a memory, the memory of being cold, wet, and miserable for so long that you forgot what it felt like to be warm and dry. It was an escape from the ship's perpetual, rotting dampness that seeps not just into your clothes and your bedding, but into your very soul. The constant dampness of the air has a cruel, paradoxical effect. It makes you incredibly thirsty. Your mouth feels dry, your tongue thick. The salt in the air and in your food, the ever-present salt-cured meat, leaches the moisture from your body. In this world of endless water, the one thing you crave is a single, clean cup of it. Life on the ship begins to revolve around a single, daily ritual, the doling out of the water ration. The quartermaster, the same man who assigned you your hammock, oversees this process with the solemnity of a high priest. He stands guard by a series of large, stout wooden barrels known as casks, lashed securely to the deck. These casks are the heart of the ship. Their contents dictate the crew's morale, their health, and how long they can stay at sea before being forced to seek land. When your turn comes, you hold out the tin cup you've been issued. Its dented end feels flimsy in your hands. The quartermaster takes a ladle, dips it deep into the open cask, and slops a measure of liquid into your cup. You look down, and your stomach gives a slight lurch. You were expecting water. What you are looking at is something else entirely. It is not clear. It is a murky, greenish-brown liquid, thick with suspended particles that swirl lazily in your cup. A thin, greasy film coats the surface, shimmering faintly. And clinging to the sides of the cup are strands of green slime, like wet hair. It has a smell. It's not the clean, mineral scent of fresh water, but a stagnant, swampy odor, the smell of a puddle that has been sitting in the sun for too long. You can see tiny things moving in it. Little white specks, no bigger than a grain of sand, wriggling through the murk. This is your water. It's a thriving, self-contained ecosystem. The wooden casks, which were probably last used to store wine or salted fish, are impossible to truly sterilize. Over weeks at sea, in the warm, dark hold of the ship, bacteria flourish. Algae blooms, turning the water a sickly green. Insects, laid as eggs in the wood of the cask itself, hatch and die in this foul broth. This wasn't a problem unique to pirates. Every sailor, from the Royal Navy to the most humble merchantman, knew the horror of stinking water. You hesitate. The man behind you in line shoves you forward impatiently. Drinking this feels like an act of madness. It looks like poison, but the thirst is a physical pain now. You close your eyes, hold your breath, and take a gulp. The taste is as bad as the smell. It's foul and slightly thick, coating your tongue with a slimy residue. You can feel the grittins of the particles against your teeth. You sit down, your throat protesting, and a wave of nausea washes over you. This is the water of life. This is what stands between you and the death from dehydration. There's a strange and little-known fact about this predicament. Sailors would often try various folk remedies to make the water less repulsive. Some would insist on straining it through a piece of cloth, a mostly futile gesture that only removed the largest floaters. Others would drop a piece of red-hot metal from the galley forge into the cask, believing the sizzle would somehow purify it. It didn't. The most sophisticated might add a splash of vinegar, if they had it, which could slightly improve the taste, but did nothing to kill the teeming life within. The strict rationing of this foul liquid must have created incredible tension. Pirate codes are famous for their democratic principles regarding treasure and voting, but how did that democracy function when faced with dwindling water supplies? It's a point that historians can only speculate on. Did the quartermaster's authority hold firm were there desperate attempts to steal an extra ladle de fuel in the dead of night? The documents don't record the quiet, desperate conflicts that must have simmered around the water casks. They only record the outcomes: mutinies, course changes, and the frantic search for land. You drain the last of the green, living liquid from your cup. It does little to quench your thirst, but it's what you get. You are now initiated into one of the most fundamental truths of life at sea. The very element that sustains you is also a source of filth and disease. It makes you realize why the men look forward to the other daily ration with such religious fervor, the ration of rum. It's not just about getting drunk. It's about getting something, anything, to kill the taste of the water. The morning water ration leaves a foul taste in your mouth and a lingering sense of despair in the air. The crew moves about their duties, mending ropes, patching sails, swabbing the deck with a sullen, listless energy. The thirst remains, a dull ache that the slimy water cowled and soothed. But as the sun climbs to its peak and begins its slow descent into the afternoon, a subtle shift occurs. A sense of anticipation, a low hum of something approaching, begins to spread through the men. Their movements become a little quicker. There are murmurs, and even the occasional rough laugh. You don't understand it at first, until you see the quartermaster once again take up his position, this time next to a different set of casks. These are not the water casks. These are smaller, more stoutly built, and bound with heavy iron hoops. A single word is crudely burned into the wood on the side: RUM. This is the second great ritual of the day. It's the event that the entire crew orbits around. Once again, you line up, tin cup in hand. The process is similar, but the atmosphere is entirely different. This isn't about grim survival, it's about a moment of genuine relief. The quartermaster first ladles out a measure of that same foul green water into each man's cup. Your heart sinks a little. You thought you were done with that for the day. But then, he moves to the rum cask. He uses a smaller ladle, one that holds a specific, carefully measured amount. He dips it into the cask and pours a stream of dark, amber liquid into your cup of swamp water. The effect is immediate and transformative. The powerful, sweet, and slightly smoky aroma of the rum instantly overwhelms the stagnant smell of the water. The dark liquid swirls into the green murk, turning the whole concoction a muddy, unappealing brown. This mixture has a name: grog. Its invention is a fascinating piece of naval history. The term grog is most famously credited to a British vice admiral named Edward Vernon, who in 1740 ordered that the sailors' daily rum ration be diluted with water. Vernon was nicknamed Old Grog because of the grog cloak he often wore, and soon the sailors began calling the watered-down drink by their captain's moniker. The official reason was to reduce drunkenness and maintain discipline on naval vessels. It served a far more practical purpose: it made the disgusting water drinkable. Pirates, who were often ex-Navy men or merchant sailors, adopted a similar practice. There's a constant debate among historians about pirate motivations. Did they dilute their rum with the same disciplinary foresight as the Royal Navy? Or was it a simpler calculation? They knew that making the men drink the putrid water straight would lead to sickness and mutiny. Mixing it with rum was the perfect solution. It disguised the taste. The alcohol killed at least some of the germs, and it kept the crew reasonably functional. A crew of perpetually drunk sailors couldn't fight a battle or sail a ship, but a crew with a steady, low-level buzz was manageable. You lift the cup. The smell is all rum now. You take a sip. The first sensation is the fiery, alcoholic burn of the cheap, unrefined spirit. It's harsh on the throat, not a smooth, aged liquor, but a raw product meant for mass consumption. But immediately following that burn, you notice what's missing. The slimy texture and the swampy taste of the water are gone. They are completely overpowered, buried beneath the aggressive flavor of the rum. The little wriggling things are probably still in there, but you can no longer feel them. It's a small mercy, but it feels like a miracle. A pleasant warmth spreads from your stomach into your chest, a welcome sensation in the perpetually damp air. The gnawing thirst is finally quenched, and the anxieties of the morning begin to recede, replaced by a gentle, fuzzy sense of well-being. Looking around, you see the effect is the same on everyone. The sullen silence is broken. Men are talking, their faces relaxed for the first time all day. It's a chemical cure for the misery of their environment. You even learn a strange piece of pirate lore connected to this precious liquid. To ensure their rum wasn't being overly diluted by a deceitful captain or quartermaster, sailors would sometimes perform a test. They'd take a small amount of gunpowder and mix it with the rum, then try to light it. If the mixture flared up, it was proof that the rum contained a high enough percentage of alcohol. This is one of the supposed origins of the term for alcoholic strength. It was a practical test to ensure they were getting what they were owed. You finish your grog, the warmth lingering inside you. For a short while, you can forget about the filth, the damp, and the thirst. You understand now that this daily ritual isn't just a ration, it's the glue that holds the crew's sanity together, the chemical gear that allows the machine of the ship to function day after miserable day. The pleasant warmth of the grog is a fleeting comfort. As the afternoon wears on, it fades, leaving behind a familiar, gnawing emptiness in your stomach. It's a hunger that is both dull and sharp at the same time. Soon, another call goes out, less anticipated than the call for rum, but just as essential. It is time for the evening meal. There is no dining hall, no mess table laden with food. The ship's cook, a man who looks more like a butcher and probably was one, stands by the galley. HES, a large man with a stained leather apron, and his hands are permanently slick with a layer of grease. He presides over a large wooden crate, and from it, he begins to hand out the staple of every sailor's diet, the foundation of every meal at sea, the ship's biscuit. He tosses one to you, and you catch it. It lands in your hand with a solid thud. It is not bread. The word biscuit is a gentle euphemism for what you are holding. It's a square slab of what looks like dried clay, about half an inch thickened, the color of pale dust. It is incredibly dense and heavy for its size. This is hardtack, the infamous sea bread, a simple mixture of flour, water, and sometimes a little salt, baked 2, 3, or even 4 times until every last drop of moisture has been cooked out of it. The result is a food product that is almost indestructible, capable of lasting for months or even years without spoiling in the traditional sense. You look at it, turning it over in your hand. You see men around you preparing to eat theirs. No one is simply biting into it. You understand why immediately. Trying to bite into a piece of hardtack would be like trying to bite a brick. It was known by sailors by a host of other, more descriptive names: mola breakers, tooth dullers, worm castles. Before you can even think about how to soften it, an older sailor sitting nearby gives you a piece of advice without looking at you. Tap it out first, lad. Always tap it out. Puzzled, you look closer at the biscuit. The surface, which seemed solid at first, is riddled with tiny holes and faint, meandering tunnels. You find a relatively clean spot on the deck and, holding the biscuit flat, you tap it firmly with the handle of your knife. The result is immediate and disgusting. From the tiny holes, A shower of small black specks falls onto the wood. They look like burnt breadcrumbs or coarse black pepper. Some of them are moving. These are your other shipmates, biscuit weevils. These insects lay their eggs in the flour before it's even baked, and the larvae hatch and mature inside the hardtack during its long journey in the ship's hold. They are an unavoidable part of the diet. The sailors had a grim but practical philosophy about them. The common wisdom, often repeated as a dark joke, was that it was better to eat your biscuits in the dark, so you couldn't see what you were putting in your mouth. Some sailors would even claim the weevils added a bit of flavor, a nutty tang to the otherwise tasteless biscuit. It's a point of minor academic debate whether sailors viewed this infestation with grim acceptance or with deep resentment. Was it just another hardship of the sea, the same for a pirate as it was for a navy man? A shared, universal suffering, or was the sight of weevils crawling out of their only source of bread a potent symbol of their wretched station? A grievance that could fuel the anger needed for mutiny for you. The debate is less interesting than the reality of the bugs now crawling on the deck. You tap the biscuit until no more specks fall out. Now comes the challenge of actually eating it. You break it into smaller chunks by hitting it against the base of a cannon. The pieces are still rock hard. The only way to make it edible is to soak it. You drop a chunk into your cup, which still has a slosh of grog at the bottom. The biscuit sinks with a small plink. You wait, stirring it with your finger. Slowly, the hardtack absorbs the liquid, softening and swelling into a spongy, flavorless mass. The texture is like wet cardboard, and the only taste is that of the rum and the foul water it was mixed with. It's a bizarre fact that some of these original hardtack biscuits have survived to the present day, are on display in maritime museums. They are centuries old, hard as pottery, a testament to their incredible longevity. Holding this pathetic, soggy lump in your hand, you find it hard to imagine it as a historical artifact. Right now, it is just dinner. It is joyless, unappetizing, and full of things that were recently alive. But it is calories. It is fuel. You scoop the pulpy mush out of your cup with your fingers and force it down. You chew, you swallow, and you survive another day. The soggy, tasteless pulp of the hardtack has settled in your stomach, a dense lump that does more to weigh you down than to give you energy. The hunger, however, remains. That starchy mass was just a prelude. Now comes the main course, the part of the meal that is supposed to provide the strength needed to haul ropes and climb masts. The cook moves from the biscuit crate to a much larger, heavier barrel, one that has been soaking in the corner of the galley. He pries the lid off with a grunt, and a new smell joins the ship's complex perfume, the intensely sharp, chemical tang of old brine. He reaches in with a large iron hook and pulls out a dripping, unidentifiable mass. It's a dark, purplish-gray color, streaked with veins of what looks like white crystal. It doesn't look like any meat you've ever seen on land. It's shrunken and hard, more like a piece of gnarled wood or a strange geological specimen than something that was once part of a living creature. This is the ship's protein salt-cured meat, usually beef or pork, that was packed in barrels with enormous quantities of salt to preserve it for years. The cook hacks off a chunk with a cleaver. It doesn't slice like fresh meat, it splinters, and the cleaver makes a dull, solid thunk as if hitting a block of wood. He tosses these chunks into a large cauldron bubbling over the galley fire, a cauldron filled with the same green, slimy water you're forced to drink. The idea is to boil the meat for hours, supposedly to draw out the excess salt and soften it. What you are eventually served is a ladle of greasy, grease is slopped into your cup on top of the remnants of your hardtack mush. Floating in the broth are a few stringy, fibrous pieces of what you are told is beef. You fish one out with your fingers. It's hot and slippery, but it is no longer rock hard. Boiling has rendered it soft, with the consistency of overcooked rope. This substance was universally known to sailors as salt junk, a wonderfully descriptive name. The junk part didn't just refer to its low quality. It was a direct comparison to old, frayed pieces of rope, also called junk, which the meat's stringy texture perfectly resembled. You put the piece in your mouth and begin to chew, and chew. It's an exercise in sheer endurance. The meat resists, its tough fibers refusing to break down. It feels like you're trying to eat a piece of leather that has been soaked in seawater. The flavor, when it registers, is not that of beef. The primary, overwhelming taste is salt. It's a burning, aggressive saltiness that makes your tongue tingle and the inside of your mouth feel raw. It's so intense that it completely obliterates any other flavor that might have once existed. After a few minutes of determined chewing, you manage to swallow the fibrous wad. The saltness seems to coat your entire throat. You look down at the other gray lumps in your cup and a question forms in your mind. A question that sailors have been asking for centuries. What was this animal? The cook calls it beef, but it bears no resemblance to any cow you've ever seen. It's a strange and little known aspect of this food, that its origin was a constant source of speculation and dark humor among the crews. Was it truly cow, or was it horse, or perhaps a mule that had died of exhaustion in some port city? The meat was sourced from the cheapest suppliers imaginable, often old dairy cows or plow oxen whose meat was tough and stringy to begin with. The intense salting process further disguised its nature, rendering it an anonymous, almost mineral-like substance. Historians, of course, can confirm from supply ledgers that it was, for the most part, beef and pork, but they can't replicate the feeling of sitting on a rolling deck, staring at a piece of gray gristle, with no real certainty of what you are about to put in your body. This uncertainty, this gap between the official record and the lived experience, is where the true history lies. It's in the grim jokes you now hear whispered around you, men swearing their peace nay at them, or that they recognized a tattoo on its hide. You force down another piece, washing it down with the greasy, salty broth. The meal provides no pleasure, no satisfaction. It is a purely mechanical act of fueling the body. It fills your stomach, but it leaves you feeling more thirsty than before and vaguely ill. You are consuming something that is technically food, but feels more like a punishment. You realize that the body is being broken down not just by the work and the damp, but by the very things meant to sustain it. The water is poison, the bread is full of insects, and the meat is a salty, unidentifiable relic. Every meal is a battle, and your opponent is your own dinner. The salty, fibrous lump of junk sits heavy in your gut, and the day's labor has left your muscles aching with a deep, weary soreness. You find a relatively quiet spot on the deck, leaning against the warm wood of the mast, hoping for a moment of simple, mindless rest. The sun is low, painting the clouds in hues of orange and purple. For a brief instant, it's almost beautiful. But then a familiar sensation returns, one that has been subtly growing over the past few days. It's an itch. It's not the sharp, localized sting of a mosquito bite. This is a more pervasive and insidious feeling. It starts on your scalp, a persistent, crawling sensation that makes you want to dig your fingernails into your skin. You scratch, then for a moment, it subsides, but then it returns, sometimes in the same spot, sometimes migrating to behind your ear or to the nape of your neck. You find yourself scratching absently, unconsciously, throughout the day. You look around. You see the man mending the sail nearby pause his work to vigorously scratch inside his shirt. You see the first mate, while barking an order, casually run his hand through his greasy hair, his fingers digging into his scalp. You realize with a sinking feeling that this isn't just your problem. It's an epidemic. It is a shared, unspoken condition of life on this ship. You have acquired permanent residence. These are lice, tiny, wingless insects that have found a perfect home in the warm, humid, and unwashed environment of your body. They are the land-based equivalent of the weevils in your biscuit, an extra source of protein, as the gallows humor of the day would have it, but one that is feeding on you. Later, as the evening settles in, you witness a ritual, that is both disgusting and strangely intimate. Two sailors are sitting on a sea chest, bathed in the dim light of a swaying lantern. One man is hunched over, his head bowed, while the other leans in close, his fingers moving slowly and deliberately through the first man's matted hair. He is not comforting him. He is hunting. Every so often, his fingers pinch together, and you hear a faint pop as he crushes a louse between his thumbnails. This was a common and necessary pastime called seaming or, more simply, low-using. It wasn't just done in hair. A man would take off his shirt a rare occasion and meticulously search the seams of the garment. This is because one of the most common types, the body louse, doesn't live on the skin. It lives and lays its eggs, known as nits, in the fibers of clothing, only crawling onto the body for a meal of blood. Your unwashed, perpetually worn clothes are not just your garments, they are their nest, their nursery, and their entire universe. The practice of mutual delicizing raises a question that official histories rarely touch upon. It was a moment of quiet cooperation, of physical closeness in a world that was otherwise defined by brutality and aggression. Historians still debate the true nature of pirate social bonds. Was their brotherhood a political ideology, or did it grow from these shared moments of grim necessity? Did this act of grooming, so reminiscent of primates, foster a genuine, if crude, form of camaraderie, or was it just a desperate, practical measure, an unpleasant task performed with the same detached necessity as pumping the bilge, a moment of intimacy born, not of affection but of shared infestation? As you watch the two men, you realize the true horror of the lice is not the itching. The itching is a torment, a constant, low-level madness that frays the nerves and shortens the temper. But the lice themselves are also carriers of disease. They are tiny vectors for one of the most feared killers of the age, typhus, often called ship fever or gale fever. The disease is not transmitted by the low-use's bite. The diseases, an infected louse defecate as it feeds. When you scratch the intensely itchy bite, you unconsciously rub the infected feces into the tiny wound. The result is a high fever, a splitting headache, delirium, and, in a great many cases, a slow, agonizing death. This hidden danger adds a layer of quiet terror to your constant scratching. Every itch is a small game of Russian roulette. You are not just trying to relieve a discomfort, you are trying not to rub your own death into your bloodstream. A sailor of this era would not have understood the microbiologic details of Rickettsia proguesci, but he knew ship fever. He had seen strong men reduced to shivering, delirious wrecks in a matter of days. He knew it was somehow connected to the filth and the vermin. Lying in your hammock that night, the gentle rocking of the ship is no comfort. The crawling sensation on your scalp and along the seams of your shirt is a constant, maddening companion. You are a host, a habitat, a walking ecosystem for a colony of creatures that are actively feeding on you. The stench, the damp, the bad food, these were external miseries. But this is an internal one. It's a filth that has burrowed its way into the most personal space you have left, and as you scratch and scratch in the darkness, you feel another small piece of your humanity being scraped away. A few weeks into the voyage, the monotony of the sea and the misery of the ship's diet have become the new normal. You've grown accustomed to the taste of grog, the texture of salt junk, and the constant companionship of lice. But a new and more sinister change is beginning to make itself known, not in the environment, but within the bodies of the crew themselves. It starts subtly. You notice a man who was once loud and boisterous has become quiet and sullen. He moves slowly, as if his limbs are weighted down with lead. A profound lethargy seems to have settled over him. You see him sitting by himself, staring blankly at the horizon, his face pale and puffy. Another sailor, while trying to chew his hardtack, winces in pain and spits a wad of blood onto the deck. He opens his mouth to show his friend, and you catch a glimpse of gums that are swollen purple and bleeding. This is the beginning of scurvy. It's a word you've heard whispered in fear, a dreaded specter of long sea voyages. In the 18th century, it was a complete medical mystery. No one knew what caused it. Was it the bad air below decks, the constant damp, the contagion passed from man to man? The theories were endless, but the results were always the same. You watch its progression with a morbid fascination and a growing sense of dread. The first stage is the deep, unshakable fatigue. Then comes the change in the mouth. The gums, starved of the vitamin C needed to produce collagen, begin to break down. They become spongy and soft, bleeding at the slightest touch. They swell up, growing over the teeth, turning from a healthy pink to a bruised purple, and eventually to a morbid black. The smell from a man's mouth in the advanced stages of scurvy is infamously foul, a sweetish, metallic odor of decay that is unmistakable and unforgettable. Then, the teeth begin to loosen in their sockets. The man might bite into a piece of softened biscuit and feel a tooth simply fall out into his hand, its root slick with blood and pus. Eating becomes an agony, then an impossibility. The disease doesn't stop in the mouth. Strange, dark blotches, like old bruises, appear on the skin, particularly on the legs and arms. They are caused by spontaneous bleeding under the skin as the capillaries become fragile and burst. The joints swell and ache, making every movement a torment. The man who was once a strong sailor, capable of climbing the highest rigging, is soon unable to even pull himself out of his hammock. One of the most bizarre and terrifying symptoms of advanced scurvy, one that seemed to defy all logic, was the reopening of old wounds. A scar from a knife fight years ago, long healed and faded to a pale white line, would suddenly turn red, swell up, and split open as if the injury had just occurred. Even old bone fractures could break again, the body losing its very ability to hold itself together. It's a little known and horrifying detail that illustrates the disease's fundamental nature. Without vitamin C, the body literally falls apart. There is a historical debate about the true prevalence of scurvy on pirate ships versus naval or merchant vessels. Some historians argue that pirates, with their pattern of shorter raids and frequent stops in the Caribbean to take on plunder and supplies, might have had more incidental access to fresh fruits and vegetables than a Navy ship on a long blockade. They would raid coastal plantations and towns, inadvertently supplying their vitamin stores. Others argue that pirates, being outlaws, had no reliable supply chain at all and were just as, if not more, susceptible. The truth likely lies somewhere in between, unvaried wildly from one crew to the next. On your ship there is no sign of a cure. The men are suffering, and the mood has turned dark. The carpenter, who doubles as the ship's surgeon, has no answers. He might offer a foul-tasting herbal concoction or a useless bloodletting. But nothing stops the slow, inexorable decay. You begin to check your own gums every morning, pushing at them with your tongue, praying you don't feel the telltale sponginess. You eye your fellow crewmen with suspicion, looking for the pale face, the listless posture. Every cough, every groan, sounds like a death knell. The disease strips away the last vestiges of the pirate myth. There is no swashbuckling bravado in a man too weak to stand, whose teeth are falling out of his rotting gums. There is only a slow, pathetic, and deeply undignified slide towards death. It's a quiet killer, one that doesn't come with the flash of a cannon or the clash of a cannon or the clash of a cutlass. It comes from within, from a simple lack, turning the body into its own tomb. You realize that the greatest threat on this voyage isn't a storm or a naval patrol. It's the slow, creeping rot that is blooming inside your own shipmates. The shadow of scurvy has cast a pall over the ship. The men move with a grim slowness, their conversations muted, their laughter gone. The daily routines continue, but they are performed by ghosts. In this atmosphere of decay, every small ailment, every minor injury becomes magnified into a source of profound anxiety. One afternoon, during a sudden squall, a sailor loses his footing on the slick deck. He falls hard, his arm catching on the edge of a cannon carriage. There's a sickening crack that is audible even over the wind and drain. The man screams, a sharp, piercing sound of pure agony. His arm is bent at an unnatural angle, the bone clearly broken. Immediately, the raw, brutal reality of life on the ship asserts itself. There is no sick bay. There is no trained doctor or surgeon. There is only the carpenter. He is a large, stoic man with hands like shovels, calloused and powerful from working with wood. His knowledge of medicine is non-existent, but he is the one man on board who knows how to use a saw. They carry the screaming man below deck, away from the rain, and lay him on his sea chest. The carpenter follows, carrying his toolbox. He doesn't bring bandages or splints in the modern sense. He brings a bottle of rum, a length of dirty rope, and a small, sharp-toothed saw he normally uses for fine woodworking. The air below is thick with the smell of fear. The injured sailor's eyes are wide with terror, his face slick with sweat. He knows what's coming. The carpenter doesn't waste time with bedside manner. He hands the bottle of rum to the man. "Drink," he orders. The sailor takes it, his hands shaking, and begins to gulp down the raw spirit. This is the only anesthetic available. The goal is not to numb the pain, but to render the patient unconscious, or at least delirious enough not to fight back. While he drinks, two of the strongest crew members take hold of his good arm and his legs, pinning him down. Another tears a strip from a dirty shirt and tells the man to bite down on it, to keep him from biting off his own tongue. You watch this scene with a growing horror. It feels less like a medical procedure and more like a ritual sacrifice. You notice one small detail that seems particularly gruesome. The sailor has a tattoo on his injured arm, a crudely drawn anchor. The break is just below it. You wonder what will become of that small piece of identity. Once the man is either passed out or has drunk as much as he can, the carpenter goes to work. He doesn't wash his hands. He doesn't sterilize his tools. He takes the arm, probes the break with his thick fingers, and makes a decision. It's a bad break, he declares. Too many shattered pieces. It can't be said. The word amputation hangs in the thick, foul air. This is the carpenter's primary solution to almost any severe injury to a limb. A shattered bone, a deep wound that has become infected. The answer is always the same: cut it off. It was a brutal but logical calculus. A mangled limb would almost certainly lead to gangrene, a death sentence. Amputation offered the slimmest chance of survival. This grim reality of pirate surgery is often romanticized. The image of the grizzled pirate with a wooden leg is a staple of fiction, but the story of how he got that prosthetic is one of unimaginable agony and terror. Historians who study the medical practices of the era confirm that this scenario was horribly common. While naval ships might have a surgeon's mate with some rudimentary training, a pirate vessel relied on the man best equipped to cut through hard materials. You see the carpenter pick up his saw. He gestures to one of the men holding the sailor down. "Hold it steady," he grunts. And then he begins to cut. He saws through flesh and muscle and bone with the same steady, practical strokes he would use on a piece of oak. The sound is wet and gristly, punctuated by the high-pitched grating of the saw teeth hitting bone. The man on the chest, despite the run, begins to thrash and scream, a muffled, inhuman sound coming from behind the gag. You feel a wave of nausea turn away, but the sounds are inescapable. You can unhear it. The swashbuckling adventure, the lure of freedom and gold, all of it evaporates in this moment. What is left is just filth, pain, and butchery. You realize that the most fearsome weapon on this ship isn't a cannon or a cutlass. It's the carpenter's simple dirty saw. And the greatest courage isn't found in battle, but in the simple act of surviving the cure. The dreadful, rhythmic sound of the saw finally stops. It's replaced by a new set of sounds: the ragged, gasping breaths of the injured man, the low curses of the men holding him down, and a soft, wet dripping onto the deckboards. The amputation is complete. The severed part of the arm, the part with the anchor tattoo, is unceremoniously dropped into a wooden bucket. It's no longer part of a man, it's just another piece of refuse to be tossed overboard. But the ordeal is far from over. The carpenter has stopped the immediate threat, but he has created a new one, a massive, open wound that is now gushing blood. If it isn't sealed, the man will bleed to death in minutes. This is where the second act of the horrifying procedure begins, and it involves a different kind of tool. The ship's cook, who has been standing by, now comes forward. He carries a small iron ladle, the kind used for serving stew, but this one is filled with a thick, black, viscous substance. It's tar, the same stuff used to waterproof the hull and the rigging. It has been sitting on the galley fire, and it is bubbling, sending up a plume of acrid, chemical-smelling smoke. This is the cauterizing agent. The carpenter takes a ladle of boiling tar from the cook. The heat radiating from it is so intense you can feel it from several feet away. The injured man, who had lapsed into a semi-conscious state, seems to sense what is coming. His eyes flutter open, wide with a fresh wave of terror. He tries to pull away, but the men holding him are resolute. This method, sealing a wound with hot tar or pitch, was a common and brutal practice at sea. It was born of desperation. In the filthy environment of a ship, a clean, stitched wound was an impossibility. Infection was almost guaranteed. The logic was that the intense heat of the tar would sear the blood vessels shut, stopping the bleeding, and at the same time create a sterile, waterproof barrier over the wound, sealing it off from the germ-filled air. It was a kill or cure method that was as likely to cause a fatal shock as it was to save a life. There's a small, almost trivial detail here that is a subject of some historical curiosity. Some accounts suggest that instead of tar, a ship's gunner might be called upon to use gunpowder. A small amount would be poured into the wound and ignited, the flash burn supposedly serving the same purpose. Whether this was a common practice or a sensationalized myth is debated by historians. It speaks to a world where solutions were improvised from the violent tools at hand. On your ship, the tool is tar. The carpenter doesn't hesitate. With a steady hand, he pours the boiling, stinking liquid directly onto the raw, weeping stump of the man's arm. The man's scream is a sound you will never forget. It is not a human sound. It is a raw, primal shriek of agony that seems to tear itself from his very soul, a sound that fills the small space and echoes in the bones of everyone present. The smell of burning flesh instantly joins the already foul air of the gun deck. It's a sickeningly sweet and smoky odor that catches in the back of your throat. The man convulses, his body arching against the hands holding him down. Then he goes limp, merciful, losing consciousness completely. The carpenter inspects his work with a craftsman's eye. The stump is now a blackened, bubbling, horrific mess, but the bleeding has stopped. He nods, satisfied. He has done his job. He wipes the saw on his trousers, puts it back in his toolbox, and walks away without another word, leaving the cook and the other sailors to wrap the horrific wound in strips of dirty linen. The man's fate now hangs by a thread. He has survived the saw and the tar, but he must now survive the aftermath. He must survive the shock, the pain, and, most likely, the infection that will almost certainly set in despite the cauterization. His chances are slim. You stumble back up the ladder to the main deck, gasping for fresh air. But the salty breeze does nothing to clear the smell of burnt flesh from your nostrils, or the sound of that scream from your memory. The romantic fantasy of piracy, with its daring sword fights and chests of gold, feels like a childish dream. The reality is this: it's a world where the only medicine is poison, the only surgery is butchery, and the only hope is to be rendered unconscious. You look out at the vast, indifferent ocean, and you understand that the true horror of this life is not the violence you might face from an enemy, but the care you will receive from your friends. The days following the amputation are a grim vigil. The unfortunate sailor lies in his hammock, shivering with a fever that 100 blankets couldn't warm. The blackened stump of his arm, wrapped in filthy linen, has begun to weep a foul-smelling, yellowish fluid. The air around his hammock is thick with the scent of infection. Everyone knows he is going to die. It's no longer a question of if, but when. His quiet, pained moans are a constant, a nerving backdrop to the ship's daily life. You try to busy yourself with your duties, swabbing the deck, mending a sail, keeping watch from the crow's nest. But your mind keeps replaying the scene below deck. The carpenter's saw, the bubbling tar, the scream. It makes you realize that the most dangerous part of a pirate's life isn't the dramatic cannon battles or the cutlass duels. The real killer, it's invisible. It is the filth that coats every surface, the germs that fester in the water, and the infections that bloom in every small cut and scrape. You start to notice the other, less dramatic, forms of sickness that are always present on the ship. Several men are suffering from a constant, debilitating dysentery, what they call the bloody flux. They are weak and pale, constantly making trips to the heads, their bodies racked with cramps. The cause is obvious. It's the water. The same teeming ecosystem of bacteria you are forced to drink every day is a direct route for diseases like cholera and dysentery to run rampant through the crew. In this closed, filthy environment, a single sick man can quickly lead to a full-blown epidemic. There's no way to quarantine anyone. You all sleep side by side, eat from the same pot, and drink from the same casks. A huff, a sneeze, or a contaminated hand dipping into the biscuit barrel is all it takes. This brings to light a fascinating and often overlooked aspect of the Golden Age. While we have records of famous pirates and their battles, the history of disease among them is much harder to piece together. It's a point of ongoing scholarly inquiry. How much did pirates understand about contagion? They certainly knew that some illnesses spread from person to person. A ship with a known sickness on board would be feared and shunned. They understood that a sickly port was a place to be avoided, but their understanding was based on observation, not science. They blamed bad air, miasma, divine punishment, or simple bad luck. They had no concept of germ theory. A strange, almost folkloric piece of this puzzle is the belief in certain cures that were passed down among sailors. Some men would wear a small bag of foul-smelling herbs around their necks, believing the strong scent would ward off the bad air that caused disease. Others would swear by the healing power of a bezoar, a stony concretion found in the digestive system of certain animals, which was believed to be a universal antidote to poison and sickness. These were, of course, completely useless, but in a world without real medicine, they offered a sliver of psychological comfort. You see this desperation in the men around you. They eye each other with suspicion. A man who coughs too much is given a wide berth. The sailor with dysentery is a pariah, is suffering met not with sympathy but with fear. The so-called brotherhood of the sea is a fragile thing, easily shattered by the terror of a contagion you can't see and can't fight. You become hyper-aware of your own body. Every stomach cramp, every headache, every scratch on your skin becomes a source of anxiety. Is this the start of the flux? Is this a fever? You find yourself examining your hands for cuts, instinctively trying to keep them clean, a futile gesture in this world of pervasive grime. The man with the amputated arm finally stops moaning. The silence that follows is heavier and more final than the sound ever was. The quartermaster goes to check on him and returns with a grim, tight-lipped expression. He is gone. The news spreads through the ship not as a shock, but as an expected conclusion. The surgery was not a failure, this was its most common outcome. You now realize that the ship is not just your home and your workplace, it is also your most likely coffin. The greatest dangers you face are not from the outside world, but from the very environment you are trapped in. The water, the food, the air, they are all trying to kill you, slowly and methodically. The real treasure you are searching for is not gold, but a few more days of life in the face of an invisible, relentless siege. The death of the amputee casts a quiet, somber mood over the ship, but it is a mood that doesn't last long. Death is too common a shipmate to be mourned for long. There are practical matters to attend to. A body, especially one that has succumbed to infection, cannot be allowed to remain on board. It is a source of both foul odorant, as the sailors rightly suspected further disease. The quartermaster gives the order. It's time for a burial at sea. There is no ceremony as you might imagine it from naval traditions. There is no chaplain to read from a holy book. No solemn flag-draped coffin. The process is as crude, efficient, and unsentimental as everything else on this ship. 2 sailors are tasked with preparing the body. They retrieve the dead man from his hammock. You notice that his sea chest, containing his few meager possessions, has already been opened, its contents likely divided among his hammock mates according to the ship's articles. The democracy of pirates extended even to the property of the dead. The shroud is the very hammock he died in. They lay his body on the heavy canvas and begin to wrap it around him, creating a tight, cocoon-like bundle. This detail is a matter of some debate among maritime historians. While the Royal Navy had official procedures, often involving sewing the deceased into a weighted sailcloth, a pirate crew would improvise. A hammock, a spare scrap of sail, anything would do. The goal was simply to contain the body. A grim but famous piece of sailor folklore comes to mind, the tradition of the last stitch. It was said that when sewing a body into its shroud, the sailmaker would take the final stitch through the nose of the deceased. The gruesome purpose was to ensure the person was truly dead, the sharp pain of the needle supposedly being enough to rouse anyone who was merely in a deep coma. Whether this was a widespread practice or just a dark tale told to spook new sailors is uncertain, but it speaks to a deep-seated fear of being buried alive. There is no sailmaker here, and no needle. The 2 sailors simply wrap the canvas tightly. Then comes the most practical part of the preparation, the weight. The body needs to sink, and sink quickly. They fetch 2 rusty, unused cannonballs from the ship's magazine. They tie them securely to the bundled hammock with thick rope, one at the head and one at the feet. The body is now a grotesque, lumpy package, ready for disposal. They carry it to the side of the ship. The entire crew gathers, not out of any formal requirement, but out of a quiet, morbid curiosity. The captain says a few words, not of prayer, but of simple, stark farewell. He was a free man, and he died one, he might say, his voice flat. The sea has taken him, as she may take us all. Then 4 men hoist the weighted bundle onto the ship's rail. They pause for a moment, the body balanced between the world of the living on the deck and the vast, empty ocean below. In that brief silence, you look at the crude canvas shroud. It seems so small and insignificant against the backdrop of the endless blue water and the immense sky. This is the final, unglamorous end for a man who had dreamed of golden freedom. Not a hero's grave, but a weighted sack of flesh and bone, waiting to be discarded. With a coordinated grunt, the men push. The bundle topples over the side. It doesn't make a clean splash. It hits the water with a heavy, ugly thud and vanishes instantly, pulled down by the weight of the cannonballs. There are a few bubbles, a swirl of disturbed water, and then nothing. It's as if he never existed. The surface of the ocean smooths over, leaving no trace, no marker, no memory. The crew disperses as quickly as they gathered, returning to their tasks. The hammock he slept in is now gone, creating a small, temporary void in the crowded gun deck. The water cask has 1 less man to serve. His share of the next prize will be divided among the survivors. Life on the ship contracts to fill the space he left, and in a matter of hours, it's as if he was never there at all. You are left staring at the spot where he disappeared. You realize that this is the only honorable burial you are likely to get out here. There are far worse fates. You could be left to rot on a deserted island or have your skeleton picked clean by crabs on a foreign shore. To be given to the sea, to be swallowed whole and disappear completely in this brutal world that passes for a dignified end. It's a swift, clean, and final erasure, just as the last of the edible rats have been hunted and The crew's morale has sunk to a new, hungry low. The cry comes from the crow's nest. It's a sound that electrifies the entire ship, a single word that changes everything. Sail. Instantly, the lethargy vanishes. The hunger, the sickness, the misery, they are all forgotten, replaced by a surge of adrenaline. Men who were just moments ago slumped against the rails now leap into action, their movements sharp and purposeful. The ship, which has been lazily drifting, comes alive. The captain barks orders, and the crew responds with a synchronized, practiced efficiency that is terrifying to behold. This is what they do. This is the entire purpose of their filthy, miserable existence. You scramble to your station. The target is a merchant vessel, heavy and slow in the water, plowing its way towards some distant port. It's a fat, unsuspecting sheep, and you are the wolves. Your ship, for all its sluggishness, has the advantage of the wind. The chase begins. The preparation for battle is a frantic, organized chaos. The decks are cleared of any loose gear. Ropes are coiled, sails are trimmed. The gun deck, your fetid home, is transformed into a weapon of war. The cannons, which have been silent, ugly lumps of iron for the entire voyage, are now the center of attention. Their crews, stripped to the waist, their bodies slick with sweat, swarm around them. The process of loading a cannon is a brutal, dangerous ballet. They sponge the barrel to extinguish any lingering sparks from a previous firing. They ram home a bag of gunpowder, followed by a cannonball. Then comes the wadding to hold it all in place. Every movement is precise, drilled into them by repetition. A mistake can be fatal, causing the cannon to misfire or even explode. As you get closer, you see the panic on the merchant ship. They are changing course, trying to flee, but it's hopeless. They are a cargo vessel, not a warship. The captain gives the order to fire a warning shot. One of the forward cannons roars, a deafening explosion that slams against your eardrums and fills the air with a thick, sulphurous cloud of white smoke. The smell is sharp and acrid, burning your nostrils. You see the cannonball skip across the waves, just in front of the merchantman's bow. The message is clear: surrender or be destroyed. This is a point often debated by historians. How violent were pirates? Really, the popular image is one of bloody, no-quarter battles. The reality, many argue, was that pirates preferred intimidation over actual fighting. A battle was risky. It could damage their own ship, use up precious gunpowder, and get their own men killed. The ideal outcome was for the target to surrender without a fight. The pirate flag itself, the infamous Jolly Roger, was a tool of psychological warfare designed to instill such terror that resistance seemed futile. There were many designed skulls, crossbones, skeletons, hourglasses, but the message was always the same: weird death. Surrender now, and you might live. The merchant ship, faced with this choice, wisely chooses to surrender. It shortens its sails and allows you to pull alongside. The grappling hooks are thrown, massive iron claws that bite into the other ship's railing, binding the two vessels together. Now comes the part you have been dreading and, in a strange way, anticipating the boarding. The captain, a cutlass in one hand and a pistol in the other, lets out a roar and leaps across the gap, followed by a wave of screaming, wild-eyed men. You are swept along with them, your heart pounding in your chest, your mouth dry with fear and excitement. You land on the deck of the merchant ship, and the contrast is stunning. This deck is clean. The wood is scrubbed, the brass is polished, the ropes are neatly coiled. The sailors are not a ragged band of outlaws. They are uniformed, disciplined men, now standing with their hands raised in surrender, their faces pale with fear. The pirates swarm over the ship like a plague of locusts. They are not here to kill, not unless they have to. They are here to plunder. They round up the crew, binding their hands. The captain of the merchant vessel is brought before your captain. The interrogation is shortened to the point. What is the cargo? Where is it stored? You and a group of others are sent below deck. You burst into the captain's cabin. It's a world away from your own squalid quarters. There is a proper bed with clean sheets, a desk with charts and instruments, even a small shelf of books. It's a small island of civilization, and your crew tears it apart, looking for the captain's personal strong cups. But the real treasure is in the hold. You pry open the hatches and descend into a space that smells not of bilge water and decay, but of exotic, wonderful things. There are barrels of wine, crates of fine textiles, and most importantly, Saxon sacks of food. Real food, flour without weevils, casks of dried fruit, edible beef. To the other men, the prize might be the promise of gold or silver. To you, after weeks of starvation, this is the treasure. This is what you have been fighting for. The hold of the captured merchant ship is a paradise of smells. The dusty aroma of dry flour, the sweet scent of raisins and dried figs, the rich, promising smell of wine seeping from the oak barrels. For a crew that has been subsisting on rotten brine, it's an overwhelming sensory experience. The men let out whoops of joy, not for finding gold, but for finding food. The transfer of plunder begins immediately. It's a frantic, almost desperate operation. Your captain wants to be away from the scene as quickly as possible before a naval patrol might happen upon them. Crates, barrels, and sacks are passed from hand to hand, a human chain stretching from the merchant hold across the decks and into the grimy, welcoming belly of your own ship. You heave a sack of flour onto your shoulder. It's heavy and a fine white powder dusts your already filthy shirt, but you don't care. This is the first clean, fresh, smelling thing you've touched in months. You see other men rolling barrels of wine, their faces split in grins. A few can't resist and knock the bung out of a cask, drinking the rich, red liquid straight from the source, staining their beards and shirts. This moment reveals a key aspect of the pirate economy. What was valuable to them, of course, they sought gold, silver, and Jules' portable wealth. But just as important, if not more so, were the mundane necessities. Food, water, wine, rum, sailcloth, rope, weapons, and gunpowder. These were the things that allowed them to continue their existence. A prize like this, a well-stocked merchantman, didn't just make them rich, it refueled them. It was like a predator making a kill, not just for the meal itself, but for the strength to hunt again. There's a historical question that arises here. What did they do with the rest of the cargo? Things like bolts of silk, bales of cotton, or crates of indigo dye. These had enormous value, but only in a port where they could be sold, and often shadowy. Role of pirate quartermasters and fences on land. Men in respectable port towns who were willing to look the other way and buy stolen goods at a fraction of their value. Without these contacts, a bolt of silk was just a clumsy, hard-to-store piece of fabric. With them, it was convertible into rum and ammunition. As the crew finishes looting the food and supplies, a new phase of the operation begins. The captured sailors, who have been huddled under guard, are now dealt with. The pirate code was often explicit about the treatment of prisoners. Unnecessary cruelty was sometimes forbidden, not out of any moral high ground, but for purely practical reasons. A reputation for slaughtering crews would mean that every ship would fight to the death, making every future prize a bloody and costly affair. A reputation for relative mercy encouraged surrender. Your captain gives the prisoners a choice. They can join the crew, become pirates themselves, or they can be left to their fate. A few, mostly young men with no prospects, see the appeal of a share in a life of no masters. They step forward, renouncing their old lives. The rest, the older men with families and lives to return to, refuse. So what is to be done with them and their now empty ships? Setting them adrift in a plundered, mastless hulk was a common practice. But your captain has another idea. He needs a better ship. Your current vessel is slow and leaky. This merchantman, while not a warship, is newer, sturdier, and faster. The decision is made: you are trading up. The process of careening their own ship to abandon it is too time-consuming. Instead, they simply strip it of anything of value: the cannons, the remaining ropes, the anchors. The captured crew is then forced onto the old, now gutted pirate vessel. They are given a meager ration of water and food, just enough to theoretically get them to the nearest port. It's a cruel mercy. They are left with a barely seaworthy vessel, a final, insulting act of dominance. As your crew settles onto their new, cleaner ship, you watch your old home, the filthy, stinking brig that has been your entire world, drift away, a ghost ship crewed by ghosts. You feel a strange mix of relief and a tiny, absurd pang of nostalgia. You survived that place. Your new home is better in every way. The wood is less rotten, the bilge less foul, the space is slightly larger. And, most importantly, the hold is full. That night, for the first time in months, you eat a meal that doesn't fight back. You are given a piece of freshly baked bread made from the captured flour. It's dense and unleavened, but it's soft. And you eat a piece of boiled beef that tastes, remarkably, like beef. It's still salty, but it's tender. You wash it down with a cup of stolen wine. It's the most delicious meal you have ever tasted. In that moment, sitting on the deck of a stolen ship, full and warm from the wine, the life of a pirate doesn't seem so bad after all. The filth, the disease, the terror, they all recede, washed away by the simple, profound joy of a full belly. It's a fleeting feeling, you know. But for tonight, it's enough. The days after the capture are a time of almost decadent luxury. The mood on your new, cleaner, and far better stocked ship is euphoric. The crew, who just a week ago were sullen, hungry, and scraping the bottom of the barrel, are now fat and happy. The grog is made with captured wine instead of slimy water. The hardtack is still there, but it's now supplemented with soft bread baked daily in the galley. The salt junk has been temporarily forgotten in favor of the merchant's barrels of higher quality cured meat. But this period of plenty creates a new set of problems. With full bellies on ample drink, the men are idle. And on a ship full of heavily armed, unruly men, idleness is a dangerous thing. The strict discipline required for survival at sea gives way to petty squabbles, drunken arguments, and festering resentments. You witness a fight break out between two sailors over a card game. It starts with a shouted accusation of cheating, and in seconds, fists are flying. On a naval or merchant ship, this would be met with an immediate and brutal flogging. But here, the rules are different. The pirate articles, the code you agreed to, are very clear on this point: no fighting on board the ship. The penalty is severe. The quartermaster, the guardian of the code, steps in. He is not a large man, but he carries an authority that is respected by all. He separates the two brawlers, their faces bloody, their knuckles raw. Their fate will be decided by the captain, but according to a tradition that is both bizarre and brutally logical. This tradition is marooning. It's a word that has become synonymous with pirates, a punishment that seems almost mythical. But it was a real and terrifying practice. A man who broke the ship's code, especially through violence against a crewmate, could be cast out, left to fend for himself on a deserted island. The historical accuracy of the classic marooning single pistol with one shot is a point of some debate. Was it a formalized, ritualistic punishment as often depicted, or a more ad hoc, brutal act of abandonment? The evidence suggests that it was very real, though the details varied. It was the ultimate expression of the pirate social contract. You violated the rules that held the fragile community together, so you were expelled from that community in the most absolute way possible. A few days later, land is sighted. It's not a bustling port. It's a small, uninhabited cay, a speck of sand and scrubby palms in the vast blue expanse. This will be the courtroom. The two men are brought to the captain. He reminds them of the articles they all agreed to. He holds up the parchment, a symbol of their collective will. He then puts the verdict to a vote. Every man on the crew, from the lowest swab to the first mate, gets to raise his hand. The verdict is almost unanimous. They are guilty. They are put ashore in a small longboat. They are not given a treasure map or a hope of rescue. They are given a flask of water, a few biscuits, and a loaded pistol each. The pistol is not for hunting. It's for the end. It's a final, grim courtesy, offering a quick way out when the slow death from thirst or starvation becomes unbearable. You watch from the rail of the ship as the two men are left on the white sand beach. They shout and curse at the ship, their figures shrinking as you sail away. Soon, they are just tiny specks. Then they are gone. The justice of the sea is swift and absolute. This act sends a chill through the celebratory atmosphere on board. It's a stark reminder that this freedom you are all enjoying is a double-edged sword. You are free from the tyranny of naval captains and merchant masters, but you are not free from rules. You are bound by a code that is, in its own way, as rigid and unforgiving as any other. The Brotherhood of Pirates is a democracy, but it's a democracy that can vote to leave you to die. You look at the faces of your crewmates. The drunken revelry of the past few days is gone, replaced by a more sober, calculating look. They are all making the same calculation you are. They are weighing the risks and rewards. The plunder is good. The food is plentiful, but the cost of a single misstep is annihilation. The pirate's life is a constant gamble, not just against the sea and your enemies, but against the very men you call your brothers. The specter of that lonely beach will hang over every future card game, every drunken argument, every decision you make. The sobering effect of the marooning lingers in the air for days. The boisterous mood is gone, replaced by a tense, watchful quiet. The crew knows they need to find a friendly port soon. They need a place to sell their plundered goods, to properly repair the ship, and to spend their earnings in a blaze of glory before the shared memory of that lonely beach drives them mad. The captain sets a course for a notorious pirate haven, a place like Nassau in the Bahamas, which for a brief, glorious period was a veritable pirate republic. As you approach the island, the first thing you notice is the sheer number of ships anchored in the bay. It's a chaotic forest of masts, a mix of small, swift sloops and larger, captured merchantmen like your own. The flags flying from their masts are a gallery of death's heads and symbols of violence. This is not a place of law and order. This is a hornet's nest. Your new, stolen ship, being a recent prize, flies the flag of its former nation to avoid unwanted attention. But as you enter the protected waters of the harbor, the crew ceremoniously lowers the merchant flag and hoists your own tattered, sun-bleached Jolly Roger. It's a declaration. You are home. The town itself is a chaotic, sprawling collection of wooden shacks, canvas tents, and a few more permanent structures, most of them taverns. It clings to the edge of the bay like a scab. The air, even from the water, is thick with the smell of wood smoke, cheap rum, and roasting meat, a welcome change from the stench of the open sea. Once the ship is anchored, the crew is granted shore leave for the first time in months. The promise of this moment is what has kept them going. The longboat ride to the beach is a frantic, joyous affair. The moment your feet touch the solid, unmoving sand, the sensation is bizarre. The world, which has been constantly rocking and swaying for as long as you can remember, is now unnerving still. You feel a strange sense of vertigo, the land legs taking a moment to adjust. Nassau, or a place like it, is a world built by and for pirates. Everything and everyone here is part of the illicit economy. The tavern keepers, the merchants who buy stolen goods, the women who trade companionship for a share of the plunder, they are all part of the ecosystem. The first stop for almost every man is the tavern. You walk into a large, smoke-filled room, so crowded and loud that you have to shout to be heard. The air is a fog of tobacco smoke and spilled rum. Men you recognize as the most ruthless killers at sea are here, laughing, singing, and gambling away their fortunes. They are men from a dozen different ships, from a dozen different nations, all united by their shared profession. The historical reality of these pirate havens is fascinating and complex. Were they truly utopian, democratic societies as some romanticize them, or were they just anarchic, violent slums where the strong preyed on the weak? The truth, as is often the case, lies in the middle. For a short time, places like Nass operated under a loose version of the pirate code, a livened, let-live frontier justice. But they were also incredibly dangerous. A drunken argument over a woman or a game of dice could end with a knife in the back. You sit with your crewmates as they begin the ritual of spending their shares. The plundered wine and food from the ship are a distant memory. Now it's about rum, served in large tankards, and roasted pig, its skin crackling over an open fire pit outside. It's a feast, a deliberate and frantic attempt to indulge in all the sensory pleasures that word and hide them at sea. You see the strange contradictions of the pirate life everywhere. A man with a face scarred from a dozen battles is gently trying to coax a tune from a stolen loot. Another, who you saw mercilessly cut down a man in a previous skirmish, is now weeping drunkenly over a sentimental song. They are not one-dimensional monsters. They are sailors driven by the same mix of desperation, greed, and a longing for something better that drives all men. For a few days, you live in a blur of drink, food, and noise. You sleep not in a swaying hammock, but on a lumpy mattress in a room above the tavern, the sound of revelry from below a constant lullaby. You wash your face and hands in a basin of fresh, clean water, a luxury that feels almost sinful. You even manage to trade a small piece of your share for a new shirt, one that isn't stiff with salt and crawling with lice. It feels like freedom. But as the days turn into a week and the silver coins begin to run out, a familiar anxiety begins to creep back in. This paradise is temporary. It runs on stolen money. When the money is gone, the taverns will stop serving, the merchants will stop trading, and the welcome will run out. And the only way to get more money is to go back out there. Back to the filth, the hunger, and the fear. You realize this chaotic, joyous haven isn't a destination. It's just a place to refuel before the next miserable, terrifying, and absolutely necessary voyage. The frenzied energy of the port town begins to wane as the pirates' silver trickles away. The last of the plunder has been spent on rum, fleeting companionship, and dice games that always seem to end in favor of the house. The initial joy of being on land has curdled into a familiar restlessness. The hangovers are getting worse, the squabbles more frequent. It's time to go. Before setting sail, however, there is one crucial, back-breaking task that must be performed: careening the ship. Your new vessel, while a significant upgrade, has spent months in the water. Its hull is a living ecosystem of barnacles, seaweed, and, most destructively, shipworms. These worm-like mollusks, sometimes called the termites of the sea, bore tunnels into the wooden planks of the hull, weakening its structure and turning sound oak into a fragile honeycomb. They will literally eat the ship from under you. The process of careening is a monumental undertaking. The ship must be completely emptied. The cannons, the ballast stones, the barrels of food and water, the ammunition, everything is unloaded and ferried to the beach. The ship, now floating high in the water, is then sailed into a shallow, protected cove at high tide. As the tide recedes, the ship settles, leaning onto its side, exposing one half of its hull to the air. This is where the real work begins. The crew, armed with scrapers, chisels, and wire brushes, descends upon the exposed hull like a swarm of insects. Your job is to scrape away the thick, slimy carpet of marine growth. The smell is foul, a mix of low tide, dead sea creatures, and decay. The work is exhausting, performed under the blazing tropical sun. Your back aches, your hands are raw, and you are coated in a stinking slime. It's a strange historical detail that this brutally laborious process was also one of the pirates' most vulnerable moments. A ship that was careened emptied, beached, and helpless was a sitting duck for a naval patrol, or a rival crew. This is why pirate havens were so essential. They provided a relatively safe space where this necessary maintenance could be performed without the constant threat of attack. Historians debate how much cooperation existed between different pirate crews. Did they post collective guards during careening, a temporary truce for mutual benefit, or was it a tense, every man for himself situation? The answer likely varied, but the inherent danger was always present. After hours of scraping, the hull is as clean as it can be. The next step is to deal with the shipworms. The ship's carpenter moves along the hull, inspecting the wood, marking the planks that are too riddled with tunnels to be saved. These are chiseled out and replaced in a rough but effective form of surgery. Then comes the fire. Bundles of reeds are set ablaze and held close to the hull. The purpose is twofold: the fire burns off any remaining marine life and, more importantly, it dries out the wood, preparing it for the final, crucial step. You are given a bucket of a foul-smelling, bubbling concoction. It's a mixture of tar, sulfur, and sometimes tallow or whale oil, heated over a fire on the beach. Your job is to paint this thick, sticky liquid over the entire surface of the hull. This is the ship's shield. The toxic mixture deters ship worms from boring into the wood and provides a new, smooth, waterproof layer that helps the ship glide faster through the water. The fumes are noxious, and the tar gets everywhere, sticking to your skin and clothes, burning where it touches. The entire process is repeated on the other side. The ship is floated at the next high tide, turned around, and beached again to expose its other flank. It takes days of relentless, filthy labor. By the end of it, the ship looks renewed. Its underside is sleek, menacing black. But the crew is exhausted, sober, and broke. The party is definitively over. The plunder is gone, and the hard reality of their profession has returned with a vengeance. The carefree pirate of the tavern has been replaced by the weary, grime-covered sailor. You stand on the beach, looking at the newly careened ship. It seems stronger, faster, ready for the hunt, but you feel weaker, worn down by the brief, frantic shoal, even the grueling work that followed. You realize that the ship is a hungry beast. It must be fed with plunder, and it must be maintained with your sweat and blood. It gives you a temporary home and a chance at riches, but in return, it consumes you. As you help load the last of the cannons back on board, you know that you are not just preparing the ship for sea, you are feeding the monster that will, one way or another, eventually be your end. The newly careened ship slices through the water with a speed and grace you haven't felt before. The hull is clean, the sails are patched, and the hold is stocked with the basic necessities for a long voyage. But the treasure chests are empty, and the mood of the crew is grimly professional. The brief, chaotic holiday is over. You're back in the familiar routine of watches, maintenance, and the monotonous diet of the sea. But something has changed. The memory of the port, of fresh food and clean water, makes the return to shipboard life even more unbearable. The hardtack seems harder, the water slim-IER, the stench of the bilge more potent. The brief taste of civilization has only sharpened the misery of its absence. Days turn into weeks with no sight of a prize. The vast emptiness of the ocean begins to weigh on the crew. Tensions simmer. The camaraderie of the port, forged in shared drink, evaporates under the harsh sun. Old grudges resurface. Men who were laughing together in a tavern now eye each other with suspicion. The ship becomes a powder keg of boredom and frustration. This period of the doldrums was one of the most dangerous times for a pirate captain. A successful captain was one who could consistently find plunder. A captain who led his crew on a long, fruitless voyage would quickly lose their respect and their loyalty. The democratic nature of a pirate ship meant that a captain served at the pleasure of the crew. He could be voted out of office just as easily as he was voted in. This is a key point of debate for historians of piracy. Was this democratic structure a genuine political ideal, a floating commonwealth, or was it simply a practical necessity to manage a crew of volatile, Armed men, did they depose captains for failing to live up to a social contract? Or was it just a case of what have you done for me lately? The truth is likely a combination of both. A captain who was perceived as incompetent, cowardly, or simply unlucky was a threat to everyone's survival and profit. You start to hear the whispers. Men gather in small groups, their voices low, their glances directed at the captain's quarters. They complain that the captain is too cautious, that HES avoiding the main shipping lanes. They grumble about the dwindling supplies. The quartermaster, who acts as the crew's representative, is seen in frequent, hushed conversations. One evening, it comes to a head. The quartermaster, flanked by a group of the most respected or most feared sailors, approaches the captain. There are no drawn swords, no open threats. It is a strangely formal and calm proceeding. The quartermaster informs the captain that the crew has lost faith in his leadership. They wish to call a vote. Under the articles, the captain cannot refuse. The entire crew is assembled on the main deck as the sun sets. The quartermaster lays out the charges: poor judgment, a lack of aggression, and a string of bad luck that has left them all poorer and hungrier. The captain is given a chance to defend himself. He speaks of the need for caution, of the increased naval patrols in the area, but his words sound hollow, defensive. The crew is not in the mood for excuses. They want results. The vote is taken. It's a simple show of hands. You look around at the hard, determined faces of your shipmates. You see the direction the wind is blowing. Reluctantly, you raise your hand with the majority. It's not personal. It's business. The captain is deposed. The fate of a deposed pirate captain was varied. Unlike in a naval mutiny, where the leaders would be hanged, a pirate captain was often simply demoted back to the status of a regular sailor. He had skills that were still useful to the crew. Sometimes, if the split was particularly acrimonious, he and those loyal to him might be given a small boat and sent on their way. In this case, your former captain accepts his fate with a grim resignation. He is now just another sailor, stripped of his authority and his spacious cabin. A new captain is elected on the spot. It's the man who was the most vocal in his criticism, a bold, aggressive sailor with a reputation for success on previous voyages. He accepts the position with a confident swagger, promising the crew he will lead them to a rich prize within the week. The change is immediate. The mood on the ship lifts. The new captain orders a change of course, heading directly for a dangerous but busy shipping channel. There is a renewed sense of purpose, of hope. But as you watch your former captain silently taking his turn at the pump, you feel a profound sense of unease. The democracy of this ship is a brutal, fickle thing. You have traded caution for recklessness, and you know that if this new captain fails to deliver on his promise, his reign will be just as short, and the crew's desperation will be even greater. The ship sails on, under new management, chasing a fortune that seems to recede with every wave. Your new captain is true to his word. He is reckless. He sails the ship into the heart of the most heavily trafficked shipping lanes, a place your former captain had deliberately avoided. The risk is enormous. This area is not just frequented by fat merchantmen, it's also regularly patrolled by the ships of the Royal Navy, the sworn enemies of all pirates. For days, the gamble seems to pay off. You spot several potential targets, but they are either too fast or sailing in convoy. The crew's initial optimism begins to fray, replaced by the familiar tension of the chase. The new captain's bravado starts to look like foolishness. Then, one morning, the lookout spies a sail that is different from the others. It's not the heavy, sluggish silhouette of a merchant ship. It's lean and fast with the unmistakable lines and sail configuration of a warship, a frigate, and it's heading directly for you. Panic erupts. A merchant ship is prey. A naval frigate is a predator. It outguns you, outmans you, and is crewed by disciplined sailors trained for battle. A confrontation is not a battle for plunder, it's a battle for survival, and the odds are not in your favor. Your captain, his reputation on the line, makes a fateful decision. He will not run. He believes, in a fit of hubris, that he can outsail and outfight the naval vessel. He roars at the crew to prepare for battle, his voice full of a confidence that no one else feels. The approach of the naval ship is a terrifying spectacle. It is a thing of lethal beauty and order. Its decks are not cluttered and chaotic like yours. They are clear, manned by sailors moving with a quiet, drilled precision. You can see the sunlight glinting off the uniforms of them array, their muskets ready. You can see the rows of cannon ports opening like hungry mouths. This is the ultimate confrontation, the clash between the two opposing forces of the sea. It's a subject of endless fascination for historians. What was the true difference between a pirate and a navy man? In many cases, they were the same men, from the same backgrounds, with the same skills. A navy sailor could be pressed into service, suffer under brutal discipline for years, and then desert or be captured and turn pirate in search of a better life. A pirate could be captured and, to escape the hangman's noose, could be forced to serve on the very naval vessel that caught him. The line between them was oft thin and blurred. But their worlds were diametrically opposed, one of rigid hierarchy state power, the other of chaotic democracy and rebellion. The frigate fires a first-ranging shot. The cannonball screams over your head, a sound like tearing fabric, then crashes into the sea 100 yards beyond you. It's a display of superior gunnery. They are just finding their distance. Your own gun crews rush to respond, but their work is frantic and panicked. The first volley from your ship is ragged. Most of the shots fall short, splashing uselessly into the water. The frigate's reply is devastating. A full broadside erupts from its side in a single, deafening roar of thunder and a massive cloud of smoke. The world around you becomes a hell of noise and splinters. You feel the impact as multiple cannonballs slam into your hull. A mast cracks and groans, threatening to fall. A man standing next to you simply vanishes in a reed mist as a cannonball tears. The air is filled with the screams of the wounded and the sharp coppery smell of blood. The clean, organized world of naval warfare you saw from a distance has now become the intimate, brutal reality of your own destruction. The deck is slick with blood and littered with the bodies of your crewmates. The surgeon carpenter is already overwhelmed, his tools laid out in a ghastly display. You are no longer a pirate fighting for treasure. You are a cornered animal fighting for your life. You fire your pistol at the figures on the other ship, a futile gesture against an overwhelming force. The battle is shortened horribly one-sided. Your ship is a crippled, floating wreck, its masts shattered, its hull breached, and its decks a scene of carnage. Seeing the hopelessness of the situation, the surviving crew members begin to throw down their weapons. The quartermaster, his face grim, strikes your tattered Jolly Roger, lowering the flag in a final act of surrender. The naval vessel pulls alongside. The Marines, their faces hardened emotionlesses, swing across onto your deck. They move with cold efficiency, kicking weapons away, rounding up the survivors. There is no negotiation, no offer of shares. There is only the grim reality of capture. Your hands are bound tightly behind your back. You and the other survivors are herded onto the frigate, forced to leave your dead and dying shipmates behind on the wreck of your ship, which is now being set ablaze by the Navy crew. As you stand on the clean, orderly deck of the warship, surrounded by guards, you watch your pirate ship burn. It was a filthy, miserable, violent place. But it was also your home, the only place you had known a strange and brutal kind of freedom. Now it's gone, and a new, more terrible certainty awaits a trial, and the hangman's noose. The gamble has failed. The voyage is over. The voyage to the gallows is a grim and silent one. You are no longer a pirate, a self-proclaimed free man. You are a prisoner, held in the dark, stinking confines of the frigate's brig. The conditions are, ironically, not much worse than what you were used to on your own ship. It's still a world of damp, darkness, and rats. But the absence of hope makes it infinitely more suffocating. You are no longer sailing towards a potential fortune. but towards a certain and ignominious end. After what feels like an eternity, the ship finally arrives at a major colonial port, a place like Port Royal in Jamaica or Cape Coast Castle in Africa. Places that had become centers for admiralty courts and the swift execution of justice against pirates. You and the other survivors are dragged from the brig, squinting in the painful sunlight, and paraded through the streets. The people of the town line the roads to stare at you. They are not the friendly, complicit merchants of the pirate havens. These are respectable citizens, and they look at you with a mixture of fear, hatred, and morbid curiosity. They see you not as a desperate sailor who made a bad choice, but as a monster, a demon of the sea. They jeer and throw rotten vegetables. You are a spectacle, a cautionary tale made flesh. Your trial is a brief, theatrical formality. The court is presided over by a judge in a powdered wig, his face impassive. The evidence against you is overwhelming. The testimony of the naval officers, the captured pirate flag, your own presence on the ship, it's an open and shut case. You have no lawyer, no defense. You are asked to speak, but what can you say? How can you explain the complex web of misery, desperation, and fleeting hope that lead you to this point? How can you explain the taste of slimy water or the agony of scurvy to a man in a silk waistcoat? There's a great deal of historical scholarship based on the court records from these very trials. They are one of our primary sources for understanding the Golden Age of Piracy. The final speeches and confessions of condemned pirates, often printed and sold in popular pamphlets, give us a glimpse into their world. But how reliable are these records? Historians constantly debate this question. Were these the pirates' true words, or were they embellished, censored, or even entirely fabricated by the printers and court officials to create a more dramatic or morally satisfying narrative? Did they die defiant, cursing the king, as the romantic stories would have it, or did they die begging for forgiveness, as the authorities would have preferred? You and your crewmates are found guilty. The judge sentences you all to be hanged by the neck until dead. Your execution is scheduled for the following morning to serve as a public spectacle. You spend your last night in a stone cell, listening to the sounds of the gallows being constructed in the town square. There is no camaraderie left among the prisoners. Each man is alone with his own fear. Some pray, some sit in stony silence. You find yourself thinking not of treasure or battles, but of the simple, stupid choice you made on that wharf so long ago. The choice between two kinds of filth, one of which came with the illusion of freedom. The morning comes too soon. You are led out to the gallows, a crude wooden structure overlooking the harbor. A massive crowd has gathered. The mood is strangely festive, like a public holiday. This is the ultimate entertainment of the age. You are forced to climb the steps. The rope, thick and coarse, is placed around your neck. From this vantage point, you can see the sea. You can see the ships in the harbor, their sails bright in the morning sun. It looks so close, so beautiful, and so impossibly far away. You look down at your own body. Your clothes are in rags. Your skin is covered in sores and scars. Your hands are calloused and permanently stained with tar and grime. You are a testament to the life you lived. Every bit of filth tells a story. The scar on your arm from a clumsy knife cut that festered for weeks, the faint pock marks of a fever you barely survived, the lingering ache in your joints from the damp, the gaps in your teeth where scurvy began its work. Your body is a map of your journey, a chronicle of filth and survival. You realize, in this final moment, that the true story of your life as a pirate was not written in gold, but in grime. It wasn't a swashbuckling adventure, it was a desperate, messy, and often disgusting struggle for survival in a world that was actively trying to kill you, the diseases in your own body, and the vermin in your food. You lost every single one of those fights. The filth, in the end, has won. The hangman pulls the lever, the platform gives way, the world vanishes.